You are on the brink. You are on the brink. You are on the brink.
Amelia Bonow, you're the director of Shout Your Abortion and a abortion rights activist that we have worked with in the past, who, from my perspective, has a very, very unique take on abortion rights in America, the messaging around them, what the future of that looks like. I kind of want to start the conversation with you telling us about the genesis of Shout Your Abortion, where it came from, that whole story.
Totally. So, summer of 2015, there was an attack on Planned Parenthood after a group of domestic terrorists led by a total psychopath named David Daleiden infiltrated a bunch of Planned Parenthoods and falsified a bunch of videos that made it seem as though they were selling fetal tissue on the black market, which is totally batshit. And also, it was gathering so much, it was like gaining so much traction that it was becoming incredibly politically damaging. The left had no response. Like, the left's response was like, well, they don't do that many abortions. They do all this other stuff like breast cancer screenings and birth control. Instead of being like, that's not true. You're fucking crazy. That's not what abortion is. And abortion is actually good. And the fact that they were sitting there saying shit like only 3% of what Planned Parenthood does is abortions was making me want to lose my fucking mind. So basically, just like the day that the House of Representatives voted to defund Planned Parenthood in September of 2015, I wrote a status update on Facebook, which makes me sound like the geriatric millennial that I am. And it basically just said like, hey, I had an abortion like a year ago at Planned Parenthood, and I'm not sorry. I'm not ashamed. I'm incredibly grateful for the people that took care of me that day. And I'm saying this out loud because the anti-choice movement is obviously relying on silence from women who have had abortions. And also, I'm a really good person, and my abortion made me happy. Like, why would I not be happy that I was not forced to become a mother? And I hit post, ran to catch the bus to school, looked at my phone like a few blocks later, and it was just like exploding. And a friend had put it on Twitter, added the hashtag Shout Your Abortion, and it just was blowing up everywhere with people using this hashtag Shout Your Abortion to talk about their own experiences, often for the first time in their lives. And this was like pre-Me Too. And I definitely remember people being like, why would anyone think it was appropriate or could possibly be impactful to talk about personal experiences on social media? Like, there was a lot of that, a lot of people just being like, you can't talk about it like this. And there was certainly a lot of, I'm pro-choice, but this isn't the way that we can't talk about it like this. We have to have people perform some level of conflict or contrition, or I did this in order to go to grad school, or I really want kids eventually. Like, all of this shit was still very much part of like the permission structure that liberals had created for people who have abortions must talk about them like this in order for it to be okay. So that was like the initial jump off. And if there is like one thing that I think represents like where we've come since then, it's that like SYA, like I was literally on the front page of the New York Times for being like a woman who spoke about her abortion on Facebook in a way that some people felt was cavalier. And that was, that was headline news. And that is not the deal anymore.
Well, I think, yes, the idea that you were someone who spoke about abortion in a way that was cavalier on Facebook, but I feel like a big reason it was such a big deal, too, is because you identified this tipping point that was about to happen. There was a very, very wide swath of women who were feeling a certain way about abortion and access to it that wasn't in tune with the collective presented reality. And to me, that is
absolutely
that's like a unifier with a lot of really interesting quick snaps that are through activism or propaganda are these moments where someone identifies most people don't feel the way that the reality
we're
around
pretending
us.
to feel, or totally.
And to me, that's the thing that's really, really interesting about that story is the idea that you were able to very quickly catalyze and shift this belief of everyone being like, oh, right, yeah, we can just be talking about this in a way that is not filled with contrition. I think that is the word that does super ID that turning point of I can talk about this, but there has to be some semblance of contrition around how I talk about it. I have to either, you know, me talking about my abortion inherently requires me to set up why it was so necessary, like why I had no other choice. Do you think there's another similar tipping point now at the phase we're looking at in this moment?
Well, look, I mean, like, I am so far past the point of wanting to talk anybody into feeling like abortion is okay. We have the numbers by a lot. And that doesn't currently matter because Republicans have captured the institutions that make these choices. And so, you know, it's like, cool, these ballot measures, you know, by and large, went through. That doesn't mean shit if there's a federal ban or if they like invoke Comstock or whatever zany shit they're going to do. So like, I am way more invested in telling people how to have abortions regardless of legality and helping people understand how to tell people how to have abortions regardless of legality and make themselves a resource for that information. I think that like the idea that this was some kind of like debate that was about like how you feel about abortion, it doesn't really matter how you feel about it. It's here. It's a part of our, like, it doesn't matter if you don't believe in gay, like people are gay, you know what I mean? And like, I think that like the abortion conversation, it got rebranded by murder or by the right as murder and about fetal personhood in the late 80s, early 90s, right? The left could not figure out how to positively, proactively lay claim to the moral high ground. And they couldn't get off the defense. So that's where we get the idea that we built a whole movement around like this word choice that like doesn't say the word, or like this idea of safe, legal, and rare, which like is implicitly suggesting that this is a necessary evil. Like this is a bad thing, but we need it, you know? And I think that like, even as of a few years ago, we were still talking about abortion as if like that it's like about the way that people like that it's a debate, you know what I mean? Like that it's a debate that people can, like, I don't know how to make the point, but it's like the idea that it's like over the course of time and history across philosophy and religion and culture, like, and science, like there is no consensus and never will there be on when life begins. And reasonable people can disagree, right? However, we don't live in a theocracy. So one religious group does not get to make that call for everybody else in a way that undermines those people's bodily autonomy and right to their own lives.
Yeah.
And like that's all there is to it. Who owns your body, you or the government? And this is why like it's an all or nothing proposition. And I'm talking about people who have many abortions. I'm talking about people who have abortions much later in pregnancy. I'm talking like all of these situations that are leveraged by Republicans in order to whip up people's sort of like moral indignation about this. Like how you feel about those things doesn't matter. Do you control your body or does the government? And right now, like a Christo-fascist government on paper controls your body. But like, we are here to tell you that that's not fucking true.
Yeah. I mean, that does take me to the kind of legislation, and this is such a, like, I don't know, level one take, but if you are staunchly anti-abortion from a religious perspective, to me, the kind of laws you should be passing are laws that realign the incentive structure where men are deeply incentivized to have those conversations, or women are deeply incentivized to be having kids. Like, there's a reason that those things are happening. Again, putting myself in the headspace of someone who is religiously tuned up about this and is like, we've got to solve this problem. To me, it would be like, cool, pass legislation that shifts the incentive models.
Well, that's why my biggest argument is the majority of anti-abortion people, it's just symbolic for them of something deeper. And that's
they're not trying to actually stop abortion from happening.
It's about control. They're not trying to stop abortion. They're just trying. And you and I have, like, we've talked about this. Yeah. Because if it was about that, then you're right. They'd be focused on incentives.
I mean, not only the incentive structure, but they would be down with medically accurate sex education. Yeah. They would be down with access to birth control. They would be really into Plan B. If they actually thought that later abortion was much worse than early abortion, they would make early abortion much more available. Like, they're not actually trying to prevent abortion from happening. They're just, like, using it as a political tool, I think, to, you know, like, the evangelical money in the game just, like, can't be overstated. And they just did, like, a really, like, long game political promise. It's, like, a great thing to do, to have a 50-year-long carrot on a stick that you're using to, like, you know, the whole conservative legal project was, like, based around the premise of, like, we are going to overturn Roe and we need your help. We need to capture the judiciary. We need to do all of this fundraising and, like, build shit out at a local level where we can make this stop. But plot twist, they can't make it stop. And also, that's part of the reason why they are comfortable plowing forward in this way, because they know that, like, their families will always have access, and their mistresses and their daughters, and that, like, this isn't going to go away for people like them. It's just going to go away or get really fucking stressful and difficult for the most marginalized people. And beyond that, Democrats don't have a fucking plan at all. Like, at all. Their plan was to restore Roe, which didn't work and broke and is from 1973. Like, I mean, do you want a fucking dishwasher from 1973? Why the fuck would we do that? Like, why would you want a thing that is 50 years old that didn't hold? And that even while it was here, did not ensure meaningful access to millions and millions of Americans. You know what I mean? Like, so I don't want the return to Roe versus Wade, which is based in a viability construct, which, like, leaves tons of people, like, hanging in terrible situations. Like, I want free abortion on demand for any reason at any time for anybody who needs one, full stop. So, like, the abortion law that I want is a blank sheet of paper. Anything less than that is negotiating from the defense.
Yeah, something I've always really loved about your messaging that ties back to that thing of how to find the moral high ground is the regardless of legality, fuck the courts, we're doing it anyway approach. It feels like it moves the issue into a space that it is inherently very empowering and exciting. And in like, obviously the language around choice is based in this idea of Americans love individualism. They love freedom.
Yeah.
Let's appeal to them there.
It's a very consumer term as well, you know?
But taking it, I think you're so poised for where culture is at right now, because I think where culture is at right now is that a lot of the right has taken control of these narratives of upending a status quo, of being the party that's going to change things and not keep retaining systems and models in place and maintaining control, and taking the angle on abortion of if a law is unjust, we're not following it is a very inherent. You can't lose the high ground if that's your moral perspective. So much progressive and leftist propaganda fails because it's asking, right? It's
asking for permission. Yeah.
It's asking for people to understand. Can you please see these people's humanity? Can you
please see our humanity? Yes, exactly.
As opposed to, we're not going to see, as opposed to just inherently saying we don't follow laws that are unjust and we don't let them get passed and we don't let them be a part of our culture. That's not what we're doing. Is an inherently just a much more, I guess, revolutionary perspective to take that I think would resonate with people outside of the binary and outside of a culture war.
Oh, totally.
You met them there with it.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think that there's, somewhere maybe a little less than 30% of Americans are hardcore evangelicals that truly believe that the earliest abortion is a murder and that abortion is genocide. But the vast majority of people, and I would say even of those people, I think that 98% of them would have an abortion if they were in, or their daughter was in, or their mistress was in a complicated pregnancy situation and they were about to die, or they were assaulted and they were 12, whatever the fuck. It's all a flexible, it's really nice that you say that, but that doesn't have anything to do with what you would do. It's totally out of step with I think how both sides sort of illustrate American values. What's the first word you think of when you think of America? Freedom?
Freedom, yeah.
Well, cool freedom, guys. This ain't it.
Yeah. It strikes me as, we've been doing a lot of work in LGBTQ issues with the Human Rights Campaign, and it's the exact same conversation there, where this isn't about morality. This is about freedom and government oppression. But you said something that struck me as interesting in that, it almost seems like So Shout Your Abortion started as a propaganda machine to move the narrative out of the defensive into a sense of empowerment. But now you think it sounds like you think you've won the game in the sense of the majority of the country's with you. You don't need to play that game anymore. Now it's pivoting to an education machine where it's let's just get access to abortion and the information on how to get access to it in front of people. Is that fair characterization?
I mean, I think that it's in broad strokes. I agree. I would hesitate to say we've won, although I do think that on a cultural front like this, you can't put those cats back in that bag. Once people start coming out of the closet and the homophobes realize that their nephew who they love to pieces is gay, and that mailman is trans, and people just have a much more difficult time dehumanizing the folks that they actually know. And now that, countless people have, now that it's very normal, I think, for people to talk about having their abortions, in real time, this happened yesterday, or this happened 10 years ago, whatever. It's just it's a normal part of the conversation. I think, that is on autopilot. It's irreversible. And the full truth of our lives is the argument, right? We are it, abortion is good and we are the proof. I mean, the first kind of tagline that SYA ever had was, abortion is normal. Our stories are ours to tell. And this is not a debate. And I mean, I think it still hits.
It definitely hits, feels more relevant now, or as relevant now as it did then.
Yeah.
Sadly. Well, Amelia, it's always a blast talking to you. You're the best.
I love you guys and appreciate you. Can I tell people how to have abortions really quick?
Please tell the people.
So abortion pills are safe and effective, and they are available by mail in all 50 states. That is true now, and that will be true indefinitely. These drugs are common. They're coming into the country in all sorts of different ways. And even if the Trump administration does some wild shit in the FDA, case or otherwise with like a Comstock or something, these pills will be around. The best way for you to learn more about abortion pills is to go to plancpills.org. Also, a thing that I want to shout out is that SYA recently worked with a number of movement partners to make this new site, which Wyden Kennedy actually donated a bunch of work to do the site and other branding for. That is youalwayshaveoptions.com. It's also available at You Have Options, and both of those URLs in Spanish. So You Always Have Options like came from this idea that like when shit goes down, abortion ban passes in Arizona or whatever, it's super confusing because these things often like ping pong back and forth. And people are just like, what the fuck is the deal with abortion access in Arizona right now? And the answer today, tomorrow, forever is that you always have options. And this website is basically just like, here's what you need. Guess what? You don't have to obey the law. This is what you need to know in order to have an abortion anywhere in the United States. You can find pills here. You can find organizations that will help you travel out of state for in-clinic care here. You can find medical support, legal support, like these other very crucial, like ancillary, like hotlines, all of the things that somebody needs to know, but presented in like a really simple manner. And we're really hoping that this tagline sort of is like becomes an evergreen rallying cry and like way to respond to these moments where like folks like you who want to use your voice in an impactful way in a political flashpoint or whatever, you share this link and you're telling people how to ignore these fucking policies. And I really feel hopeful about like our just irrepressible freedom. Like we are going to win because they can't fucking stop us. So I encourage folks to sort of like brush up on those resources. Go check out that website, youalwayshaveoptions.com. Look at SYA's site. We have posters, we have stickers. Write the URL on a wall. Like abortion pills are not only available, there are community networks all over the country that are sending them to people for free. So like you tag that somewhere, you could be like giving people free abortions. So let's not trip too much about the government. Let's build our own community resilience by getting educated and getting this information to the people who need it.
All right, game on.
Hell yeah.
Game on.
This is DoubleThink, conversations inspired by the themes of This Is Propaganda. Your hosts are Josh Belhumeur and Malcolm Critcher. This is a production of Brink. You can learn more at brink.com.